My phone doesn't want to stay. How are you? I hope you're well. I just started this Instagram. Well, I started it under the guise of something else and then switched it up. My name is Carrie. My name is Carrie Holschuh. My last name is very German. I'm very Irish. And my father, when he took the DNA test, came out like 70% Northern Wales, he was very surprised by that. So I have very little German in me, but I have a very, very big, weird, wild German last name. That means wooden shoe in German. I just wanted to take some time to introduce myself. I've been a student of yoga for 25 years. I've kind of run the gamut. I got really hopped up into the spiritual circles, which I now feel are pretty harmful. Not a fan. Just doing this logo to slap a lotus flower on there was a bit painful. I love the symbology, but I hate all of the typical symbology of yoga. I think I just got really sick of it, being entrenched in that world for 25 years. It's a long time. It's something that I have been the most consistent with in my life. And I got multiple certifications. Aerial yoga is probably one of my favorite, but trauma informed. I actually got certified in combining traditional Chinese medicine with yoga and finding they're very different, but there's some intersectionality between the two. And that is more in alignment with yin yoga and what yin yoga does for your fascia and meridians. And, Chinese medicine is all about working deep within the meridians. But then I've always had chronic illness since I've been a kid. I had scarlet fever. I was just constantly sick. And I grew up with parents who had parents who never gave medicine. My mom's parents were actually like very primal in nature in terms of medicine. And unfortunately, that didn't pass over. It did and it didn't. So as I got older and I aged out of being with my pediatrician who was from Europe and not a big fan of American medicine, I transitioned to a regular medical doctor, and I was just constantly on medicine. And it turned out that I had chronic Lyme that went undiagnosed for a really long time. And we know how insidious Lyme could be, and it completely shredded my microbiome. So I studied primal medicine, indigenous medicine. I studied medicine across multiple cultures. I've tried every diet under the sun. Not a big fan of the word diet because I really feel like it's a lifestyle. I was always accused of being insanely rigid and disciplined, and I have to be this way. I've always done better eating smaller amounts of food. I was fasting in my younger years and not even realizing what I was doing and why I felt so good doing that. It's so amazing. Our bodies are so damn intelligent. And, I had adults in my life at that time tried to convince me that I had an eating disorder. I didn't have an eating disorder. I was just honing into that ancient wisdom inside of me. And then, like adults tend to do with kids, just screw it all up. So I discovered the Lion's Diet, and I ate red meat for almost 2 years straight, and that was it. And now I've been able to branch out a bit, and I am so excited that I ate a sweet potato 2 days ago. And what people don't understand about food allergies and food sensitivities, and there's a huge difference, but even within the food allergy realm, that does not mean you hive or rash or anaphylaxis. It could be migraines, it could be low-level eczema, it could be joint pain. You can start going into arthritis at a very young age, and it could actually be a food allergy. So I discovered this over decades of getting insane amount of testing and blood work, and it was a phenomenal functional medicine doctor out of New Jersey who honed in on what was really going on. I've spent over $30,000 out of pocket to get myself well. And my ace in the hole, my magic trick is working with a quantum healer, which I'm pretty blunt and direct. I don't like to pull punches. I like to call a spade a spade. My mom would always, to her dismay, would get very upset with me because since I've been a kid, she would be like, you have no stoplight, Carrie. You think it and you say it. And I often say what's deemed inappropriate things. But I feel like I'm speaking the truth and I don't shy away from that. But I've always been a little more cautious sharing about working with a quantum healer because it's still so poo-pooed, but we know quantum physics is real. We know the quantum world exists. The quantum realm is a real thing. And I got so sick at one point post-divorce because of all of the stress. And I was working 7 days a week for years. I mean, my girls and I took 2 vacations in 10 years, and that was to Disney. So I took 2 kids 15 months apart to Disney by myself. Wasn't a vacation for me, but they had a blast, and that's all that mattered. But, you know, I'm kind of like a workaholic. I come from that energy. Work ethic. I pride myself on my work ethic and holding myself to a really high standard. And especially running a business, you kind of have to eat, sleep, and drink your business. That's your business. That's your livelihood. So I can be very anal and a perfectionist, and I really pride myself on my work. So I was just driving myself into the ground. At one point, I was working 2 jobs, running my business. I had my girls, and I was getting my master's. So there was a time where I couldn't get out of bed, literally just couldn't get out of bed. And I found this quantum healer who was in Montana. She's a native of Montana, now has since relocated to Hawaii. And within weeks, I was out of bed and able to breathe deeper and take more movement. And it was just such a miraculous transformation that I've, stuck with her, been working with her for like the last 3 years. I have a really unique background. Some of you on here know my story. We all have a story. I don't say this for pity, but you can't help but your past to shape you. And I think there are people who can turn pain into passion and really transmute and transform that. And unfortunately, other people get stuck. And I'm very fortunate that I have a high mechanism for resilience, and I understand grit. And that, I come from good stock. So I'm really grateful for that. So my family I buried my sister's 2 kids, my brother and my mom. They were all very young. All of them were terminally ill except my brother. So I was 13 when I lost my sister. She was only 23. I was in my mid-20s when I lost my nieces. They were 15 and 18. They passed away within 4 months of each other. So that was very overwhelming. I was blessed and honored to be in the room with the passing of my one niece. And what an experience to walk through that process with somebody in the last stages of their life. My brother just blew us all away, and he died at 39. He's written up in books. You can Google him, Richie Holshoe. He unfortunately died hiking, doing what he loved at Acadia National Park in Bar Harbor, Maine. He was 39. I was 29. And then 15 months later, my mom passed away at 60. My mom buried 3 kids and 2 grandkids. I don't know how she did it. I had the deepest respect and reverence for her. She is my greatest role model. I'm really blessed and lucky to have had such an amazing mom. I know other people don't have that. I'm getting like super choked up because God, I don't know how she did it. And her smile lit up a room, and she was just the most amazing human being ever. And everyone who knew my mother, she really emanated such deep love and warmth and peace, and she gifted everybody who crossed her path that. And I wanted that. I wanted that magnetism and that mechanism, and I'm told that I have it. And thank you to everybody who says that. I think it's so valuable to be able to gift people that. And yeah, a wild ride. And so I think what happened is I was doing physical therapy on my nieces who were born with cystic fibrosis. My mom and my sister died of cancer. My sister died of a very, very rare form of cancer called MEN, multiple endocrine neuroblastoma. So I was doing physical therapy on my nieces for cystic fibrosis by the time I was 9 years old. I had responsibilities that other people didn't have. I had an alcoholic parent, and addiction brings a whole different set of things. And the harder life got, the more I think it drove the addiction. And then I had older brothers and sisters who were like flower children. And so there was a lot of drugs in the house and crazy behavior. And my home was filled with a lot of love, but a lot of chaos. And so I think what happened was after my brother, it rocked my world, and years went by, and I was in an amazing home, blocks from the beach. And during COVID, like many people, she decided to sell, and she got a ton of money for it. And I had to move, and I decided to change my whole life. And all I did was work, and my whole life was about money. And I decided to live. And that's what I did for 4 years: exploration, experience after experience, adventure after adventure. And here I am. I feel like I'm in a more grounded time in my life. I'm tipping 50, and I'm craving a little bit more stability, and I want to get back to building my business. And adventure and exploration are great and necessary, and my soul needs that. But it's perimenopause does something very specific to a woman's body as well, going through my changes, and that's such a rite of passage and such a gift. I don't want women to fear that. I have so many friends like flipping out and struggling with all of those changes, but it's such a gift. It's so profound. There's so much wisdom. They call it the crone stage of life. And I get really super hopped up and excited for every year that I'm afforded on this planet. And it's probably because I lost so many people. And again, how could that not shape you? How could I not want to venture out? I had a high sense of responsibility and duty. And I was a nurturer and a caretaker. So I was always worried about everybody else. I was always taking care of everybody else. And these last 4 years, I gifted myself time and energy and compassion and fun and adventure. And I really needed that. I felt like I lost years. It's ironic because a friend from grammar school and high school recently came back into my life. We've kind of flitted and floated out of each other's lives, and I think we were a bit of a nemesis for one another. There was a bit of a competitive thing, or just tension, push and pull. And she came back into my life recently, and I didn't even think of this as a kid. Like, this never occurred to me of how our lives in my home was perceived to other people, especially my friends. And she said, I'll never forget coming over, and I set my friends up with like a movie and treats or whatever. And they knew that they had they could just jump in and out of the pool whenever they wanted. My home was like Grand Central Station, but my parents took people in, and we did an open door policy. And I grew up in a time where doors weren't locked and no one had a call. People could just show up. And my mother would always roll out the red carpet, coffee was always made, the tea kettle was always going. There was always an abundance of food and warmth and love. And that's the home I grew up in. And so my friend said to me, I remember you setting us up and with all of these treats, and then being like, okay, I'll be back. I have to go do physical therapy on my niece, one of my nieces. And, we were probably like 12, 13 years old at that time. And she was like, oh my God, this is this girl's reality. But my parents, I think, did like a banging job of just making our lives as normal as possible. So there was no, you couldn't be a victim. You couldn't feel sorry for yourself. It was like, this is our life. We accept it. We do what we have to do, and we move on. And I'm really grateful for that. Like, what a powerful lesson. And I'm so grateful that I had those types of parents. My one parent that was an alcoholic, just a high functioning alcoholic, but a lot of stuff comes with that, and it's a family disease. So I went to a lot of Al-Anon meetings, and I did a lot of therapy to learn to like not hate the addict, but you can hate the addiction. And there's so much enabling and codependency wrapped up in that. And I think that was the other thing. I've been divorced and on my own for 18 years. And it was so important for me to move away from codependency. And I just had this conversation with the same friend that I recently reunited with. I think it's almost impossible, because the goal is interdependency, right? Like, we witness nature around us, and it's this interdependent, beautifully orchestrated ecosystem. But I think for humans, it's really important to go from codependency to independency and learn how to stand on your own 2 feet and see what that feels like, and then start to move into more interdependent states, if that makes sense, especially within intimate relationships. So I just wanted to give a little bit of background and history. I'm often misunderstood. People, a lot of people, including my family, felt like I just went buck wild. But I had this opportunity. I mean, when you're told, when a home that you're in, and you're in this like cush, comfortable situation, which I needed because the divorce was quite volatile and very challenging, not easy at all. That's like a whole nother video, and a really powerful lesson on acceptance and forgiveness, because it was tough. I didn't get the things that most other women get. When I meet men and they're like bashing their ex and like hating on all women, and you women, like, you just get everything. It's like, that was not my situation at all. Like, I was responsible for everything. Like, he got everything, and I had to fight for custody of my kids, and that became my priority and the most important thing. And so because there was such an imbalance of power and choice, I had to sign off on being responsible for pretty much everything just to have custody of my kids. So, and that's okay. It is what it is. But it's been a wild ride. I lost my train of thought, because it's like I've lived like 100 lives in 48 years. And I'm going to be 49 very soon, less than a month. It's been a wild ride, and I should probably write a book. I've been told by many people that I should write a book. My dear friend in Italy is like, it's almost unbelievable, all the things that you've lived through. And I get that. I get why she says that, but she says it with love. She's not putting me down. It's not a cutting thing. I think that's why I'm so good at what I do. I think that's why I'm so good at counseling and coaching people, is because, and it's so hard for me to nail down a niche, because I've endured it all. Narcissistic abuse. There was a lot of abuse in my home. Addiction. I worked in the addiction field. I'm halfway through my master's to become a licensed counselor. I've worked in an intensive outpatient program with co-occurring disorders. I worked in a counseling center in higher education. I have many certifications under my belt in the mental health and addiction world, and that was my world for years and years and years. Grief, I'm a rock star, and I've lost people to unlivening themselves, because you can't say the S word anymore. And I almost lost my daughter, my oldest daughter, twice. I know how all of that feels. That's probably the hardest thing that I've ever endured. And that's what makes me revere my mom even more, is like, how did this woman bury 3 kids and 2 grandkids, and I almost lost my oldest daughter twice, and she's still here, and I still have a visceral reaction when I reflect back to those years in our life where I literally didn't know if she was going to live or die. And that was the reality of our life for like 2 straight years. It was brutal, and I don't wish that on anybody. But she's here, and I'm grateful for that every day, every waking moment. I don't know why my life has ended up this way. I tend to I trigger the fuck out of people for whatever reason. I bump up against people who mistake my kindness for weakness. I'm often taken for granted and taken advantage of because I do happen to have a really big heart. My spirit is generous in nature. That's just who I am. And I hate having to live feeling like I need to be boundaried up all the time. And I'm like super selective at this point in who I let in. People are often very surprised at how warrior-like I can be, because I lead with love, and I don't want to have to change that. I really don't want to have to change that. But it very much, relationally speaking, usually becomes a like fuck around and find out. And when I make bold decisions with a lot of conviction and swift decisions, I have very good reasons, but I don't really have a lot of interest in throwing people under the bus, and my time and energy is so valuable that I don't want to waste it having to talk smack about people, what they did or what they didn't do. So I just make those decisions and move on. Yoga's a lot about detachment, and I've kind of mastered the art of detachment, and it seems cold and uncaring, but detachment is a very specific energy, and mastering it is very vital. And when you have a sensitive disposition and your energy is sensitive, so throwing a big thought form out there, highly sensitive person, HSP, which I've been since I've been a kid. So I'm that person that I go into a crowd and I will get so overwhelmed, or I can walk into a room. I remember being a kid and walking into a room and looking at my mother and saying, nope, can't stay here. Can't, whatever's happening here, can't handle it. I'm overwhelmed. I don't like how I feel. And that happens when I meet people. I pretty much know right away. Now, what happens is sometimes I can meet people, I can get involved in a situation, I can think they're for my greater good. And then when I step back or fully remove myself, I go, oh, I can look back like that was there. People show you who they are very early on. I think, and I can only speak for myself here personally, where I get tripped up is if I'm in a very vulnerable position, that vulnerability is almost always taken advantage of. And I'm not saying that's even intentional on the part of other people. It's usually not. It's an energetic exchange. And my ownership in that is that I was vulnerable. I wasn't in a place of full empowerment. And I wanted to believe what I wanted to believe about that situation, about those people. And that's on me. So it's not like a blame thing. It's energy. I mean, it's all energy. I have no idea what's next. I just moved to a new area. I have no idea if I will stay here. I am adept at making the very best out of my circumstances. Life has taught me that. I think it's a great skill set to have. And I'm happy, I'm proud of myself that I'm able to do that. So we shall see what's next. But a long intro, a lot behind all of that. I'm gonna have to upload this to my YouTube channel because it's way too long to do, and my reels are already like 10 to 12 minutes. That's a little bit about me. I love being a mom. I love my girls. I can't wait to get to Jersey. My brother's death taught me more than anything in life. That has been my greatest teacher, my greatest lesson in life, and that's to live life to the fullest. Every moment is precious. Life is beautiful even when it sucks and it feels hard. And I really try not to take the people in my life for granted. I try not to take any of the experiences and moments that I incur for granted, because having that here today, gone tomorrow, was just that impactful. And how could it not be? How could it not be? So I think personally, I've struggled with, do I need another certification beyond health coach? Do I need to finish my master's degree to be able to do this? And to this day, I have friends that call me and say, you'll know what to do. You give the best advice. I know I can trust you. Always, my friends will say to me, you're going to give me the most honest answer out of anybody in my life, because I don't pull punches. And I'm the hardest on myself. So, and I don't think that's a bad thing. It's kind of like lies within the Stoic principles of be hard on yourself, extend compassion and grace to others. But this is why all of a sudden I've had this like huge resurgence to want to do wellness coaching and like really take a good stab at it, because I know this is my path. I've had many healers, and I've worked with many healers. I worked with a shaman for 2 years. I've worked with healers from all over, from all different walks of life and backgrounds. And I've had many healers tell me that this was my path. And then every time I stray from it, it becomes chaotic and it becomes a shitstorm, and it never works out. It never works out. So this is kind of where I'm at. And thank you for being a part of the process. If you dip out, you dip out. I have like very little attachment to outcomes these days. I think, again, that's just in alignment with healthy levels of detachment. If you're interested in working with me, I am working on my pricing now and what that's going to look like. I will probably start to do online yoga classes. I don't love it. I love the in-person energetic exchange of that, but I know that my reach could be bigger and greater, and I can work with people from Jersey and South Carolina that I deeply miss, and we had so much fun doing yoga together. Anyway, I love you to pieces. I hope you have the best day possible. Ciao.